You have to excuse me looking like Kenny, but it's freezing in here. It's about 72 degrees and in the desert. That's cold. And plus, this swing just gives me the chills. Today we're going to take a look at Kaitlin Milligan. Yes, 287.37 yard average. We're going to look at a couple of checkpoints specifically from the impact past, so you can look at your swing and probably cry after looking at the comparisons. We learned about connection before impact in the last couple of videos. Let's look at connection after impact. So stay with me through the whole video because we're going to look at her stats and then we're going to break down her cause and effects and learn about the golf swing, and maybe, just maybe, if the New Year's elf is out there, give me a swing like this, please. I still have time. Let's get going. So here we have Kaitlin Milligan. Let's take a look at her driving average, 287.37, which is currently second. Driving accuracy, 61.54. Now you think, well, 61.54, that's not that good, but let's take a look compared to the men's out there. So if we go to the men's driving average, 61 will put her 79 to 80th, but let's take a look at why you should not compare yourself to the PGA Tour players, because in all reality, if you compare yourself to the ladies, look at their driving. Number one is 84.77%. Look at all the 80s and 70s, and even the lowest in the field is at 53.4, where the men's lowest in the field, we're looking all the way down to 48.4. So I think if you want to emulate anybody, go emulate the ladies, even though they still hit it further than most amateur men out there. And yes, I hate to burst your bubble, but that's the case. And if you disagree with me now, go play one of these LPGA ladies. They will humble you very quickly. So just a word of wisdom, go look at the LPGA stats and emulate them. But let's take a look at her cause and effect, because it is such a great swing. So when we watch this swing play over and over, the number one thing that stands out to me is not only the amount of turn that she establishes, but from impact past up into the sky, we can definitely see so much connection, and this is how you deliver the power that your body's creating. If you look at your swing, I am positive that you will see some disconnection with your hands past impact, and that's usually a ball position issue, usually weight management issue, usually lack of turn, or a combination of all of these. But the key in your swing is if you can get your body more involved and keep your hands and arms more out of it, that will get your consistency more, but also deliver an immense amount of power with very little effort, because it takes more effort to get your hands and arms involved than it does your body. So always check your body rotation. If you have not gone through any sort of TPI testing to test your range of motion, go to TPI.com and find somebody in your neighborhood. It could be worth just the small investment to see where you lack in rotation, and they can help you. And I know I put a poll out there a couple of days ago talking about 2025 goals for golf, and a lot of you guys and girls have answered that and put that your number one goal by far, it's about 85% of you, want to get in better shape for golf, but you can't unless you know your weaknesses. Go get TPI tested, that's step number one, and then go find a gym. Let's go join a gym together. $29.95 a month, and we're going to be looking like a bunch of Rockies out there. Adrian! So we've drawn our usual lines. That yellow line's a spine angle, the long red line's lower plane, short red line's upper plane, and we also have a back brace line, which is the blue on the left side. Right side, we have the right brace line on her right hip to see if she has any lateral shift or if she just rotates. But something that you will definitely see that's very different, and this is probably the first time I've seen this at this level, where we actually have the connection off of her centeredness. Now this could be a camera angle. I don't know if it is, because look how far that golf ball is, and this is unusual as well. Typically when I see that golf ball get way out there, we start seeing a path left at impact, which will give you that little cut or the pull. Rope hook sometimes if you get your hands too involved, or even a banana ball if your hands aren't involved enough. So I would not suggest getting the golf ball that far out unless your compensatory motions can abide for that. But this is a very cool, unusual setup, because if we look at the spine angle, we're going to draw this in Barney Purple, we can see that the spine angle goes right through the hands, and her golf ball should be right about here where that X is, but she actually back presses this. And this is, man, this is something that I want you guys to start to look at more of doing, is back pressing. Stay away from forward pressing, because forward pressing, you now have to close that gap down, and that becomes a steep motion, or you fall back to make up that gap and realign those two circles, and that becomes an issue too. And for those, remember that we have these two circles. So let's draw these two circles right now. We're going to draw the first one in our Barney Purple circle to show you her spine angle, and then we're also going to draw one in green to show you her shaft angle. Now we have both of these kind of close enough for government work, but we're going to draw a line that is perpendicular to each of these, and we can see that her shaft angle is definitely swinging up, but then her spine angle is also matching that slightly, not as far up, but at least they're both up and up. So this is great because it just makes sure that we are getting in a position to potentially hit more up on the golf ball, which, remember, for the driver, helps you decrease your spin rate and increase your launch angle, which is the number 1 and number 2 criteria to hit it further. Look at your setup and see how your 2 circles match up, and it all depends on how you compensate from that point. But let's take this club back into the midway point, and we do have a nice connection. And remember the video from a couple weeks ago, we can start to see some similarities and some differences. On the right side of the screen, we do have that great triangle that is still somewhat connected to the center of her chest. On the left side, we do see that that club is still connected to the center of her chest. There is a slight right elbow breakdown, which will cause this club to go more inside and a little flatter. So remember, the couple of videos ago, we talked about that triangle and how to keep it more connected for the amateur. This is a good medium point. So if you cannot get a lot of turn and stay connected with that nice triangle, it is okay to drop the right elbow a little closer to your body, but do not go ahead and pull that connected to your right side too much, because then your club is going to be very flat and cupped inside. Now you've got some issues to reroute that on the downswing. As we continue this, we can see her hands do get a little bit higher than her initial secondary plane line, and that secondary plane line, obviously this is dependent on your personal preferences. We see players get higher, we see players get lower. I typically do see, though, the longer players get that club much higher. You have a lot more separation between your right elbow and your body, because when you do drive and turn, now we can get a little bit of separation to increase your lag with your arms. However, this is a risky move, and I would not suggest at home doing that. You want to try and keep it somewhat in the middle, because you want it to be a little bit more connected to your body. But if you have good time and if you are an athlete, go ahead and let that right elbow fly. It might help you develop some more distance, as long as you don't compensate too much and it affects your spine angle and your posture, because that ultimately will affect your plane. We go a little bit further back, and the cool thing about this is the hands get to the top and they're still connected to that center point check. And remember, the higher your hands go, the more you're going to be steeper and risk not getting deep enough. So if her hands were a little bit higher, she would not be deep enough and she would have to reroute her hands. This is why I say you want to make sure you have to be careful of how high your hands are. As long as they stay on that Barney purple line, that means that's your centeredness check. As long as they stay on that line, that's about as high as you would like them to go without sacrificing some compensations. On the right side of the screen, we can see a huge amount of turn, and we see those hands are definitely crossing over to the right shoulder, which is acceptable. You don't want them to cross any further back. How do we know this? We can see the length of the club. So the shaft length and her turn do not form a T. If her shaft was forming a T, that means her arms would have disconnected. So let's redraw that. So let's say her turn was here and her club shaft would get past that. That means her arms would have gone too far back. Remember, the golf swing's about a second long, and you have about 3/10 of a second from the top of your swing to impact to strike the golf ball. So whatever you have disconnected on the backswing, you have a third of the time to reconnect and still hit the ball consistently. So you want less motion with the hands or arms, if at all possible. And where does that come from, ladies and gentlemen? More turn. So let's do our patented triangle trick. Let's get this in Barney purple on the left side, and we're going to draw a rudimentary. Is that even a word? I keep saying that word wrong. Rudimentary. Let me look it up 1 second. It is a word, but I don't know if I'm using it correctly. Let me know if you are a scholar down below. Am I using that word correctly or not? But let's redraw that triangle. I was so caught up in my misuse of that beautiful word that I ruined the triangle. So let's draw that triangle check, and let's look at her motions now. For those of you at home, on that triangle check, you want to draw from the butt of the club right to the center as best as you can. So the hands do work their way slightly on the right side, slightly, and we can see there. So this could come from the hands being slightly higher. So if you're up here and you start bumping into the target, you can see what happens. My hands will not be in a position to drop a little bit quicker in that slot. So this could be a result of those high hands that she's just learned to do that. Not that big of a deal, because obviously she's made it on tour. She can do it consistently. So keep that in mind. If your swing does have some compensations, doesn't mean it's a bad swing. You just have to look at how severe those compensations are, and are they affecting your misses so much that you can't keep the ball in control when you miss it. Just like we learned yesterday, handicap is not about good shots, it's about how you miss the ball. So because we're able to stand up slightly, that gets that club a little bit more flatter, a little sooner, and we can see that the club does fall on the lower plane line, and the next frame we see it drop slightly below that lower plane line, which means this is going to be moving slightly right and definitely up. As we strike that ball, we can see the good amount of hip turn. We see that right leg completely straightening up, pushing all the way to that top left shoulder. And if we clear up these lines, we can definitely see some slight posture loss. New Barney purple line, we can see we stood up slightly. So remember, when the hands, let's get the arrow going, when the body tends to move this way, the hands will also move this way as a result. So if you drop your hands in the slot and they're moving out, great, your potential to hit it more up could jump through the roofs. But just be careful. Make sure you look at your swing. And if you don't have somebody to work with, go get a coach. And when we follow through on the left side, we can definitely see this picture is about as good as you can get. So she's returned to her initial spine angle, but we don't see any hand. We don't see anything flipping through, coming over, which means that her hands are truly connected to her chest. And this is the positions I am talking about, is how can you keep your hands to your chest? Even as she strikes it, even as she releases that club, we can see now it's barely getting to that left shoulder. So you can see the motion of the hands in the golf swing. The more you turn, the less your hands have to cross over your chest. Now, they should get to about the right shoulder, and as you strike the golf ball, they should get back to the left shoulder. That's about the motion you want them to go side to side. Amateurs out there, if you don't turn enough, guess where your hand has to go? Let's go way back over here. Now, if you rotate to impact, guess who's disconnected? You are, and guess what you have to do? Slow down the turn and do what? Whoosh. Get those hands involved to flippy dip, and then your hands will cross your chest and you'll finish very low, not a lot of turn, but then you go ahead and complete your turn to look good. It's too late for that. The ball's about 50 yards down the fairway at that point. So let's look at the right side of the screen just for that same thing. So we see, look here, it's still a little bit connected to the right side as we strike that golf ball. Because of that forward ball position, she can maintain her angle. We can see this great angle here. So relative to the ball position and her tilt, you can see, look at that angle that she's established one frame before she strikes it. As she strikes it, she can then release it and keep her chest relative to that release point. So as she releases it, it still hasn't crossed her spine angle, which is key. You want it to maintain that position as you strike that golf ball. So this is phenomenal. But here's that picture again. Look at the right shoulder. We're going to do this frame by frame. Connected to the center of the chest. Connected to the center of the chest. Next one, this is the best picture right here. Look at that. She's still connected to the center of the chest, well past impact. Connected to the center of the chest. So what can you get an idea? The more you can stay connected to the center of the chest, the further you will hit it, because now your body is striking that ball. All your hands and arms are doing are just releasing. They're just throwing that angle. They're not crossing over or trying to save your golf swing from hitting in the bushes or killing Mrs. Havenkamp on the 5th tee. They're just going along for the ride of the turn. But you can't do that unless you're doing what? Having a good setup, having a good ball position, in your posture, athletic, turning, staying centered, and that all stems around being flexible enough to stay in your posture and increasing your turn. So for all my goal setters out there for 2025, increase your turn, get more flexible, and lay off the hot dog at the turn and the beer. Well, maybe just lay off the hot dog, keep the beer. That's our therapy. Don't forget this Sunday, we already got 4 people lined up. Join us on Sundays, 6 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We have a lot of fun out there, and you can also learn stuff for free. If you want to appear in that episode this week, send me your down the line face on. But other than that, I will see you next time. Fairways and greens.